Okay, let's do an update on Umicom framework. Now it's the 11th of January 2015. I'm going to quickly take you through Eclipse so you can know exactly how to launch Umicom framework. So I'm just going to click on Eclipse. Now the way Eclipse works, you have to set up a workspace. If you haven't got one already set up, you can just create any workspace at all. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to browse to my computer and create a folder. Okay, so I've created a quick workspace folder called Umicom Framework Workspace 11th of January 2015. Just make it easier for myself to remember the update. And then I'll just press on OK and just wait for Eclipse to load up. Import existing Maven project. I'm going to locate it. And again, you can see Maven dependencies are being downloaded. Now if we have a look at the POM file, pom.xml, you can see all the dependencies that we've decided to include. We've got LinkedIn, we've got a Spring Boot starter integration, and some of these things we don't actually require for this project. However, I've just added it just for a demonstration, but later on we will make use of all the different packages that we've included in the POM. Now, if you was to create Umicom framework from scratch, you will start by creating the POM file. There's a number of ways that you can create the POM file. You can click on File and then Start a Spring Starter project. So you can select that. If I click on that, it should give me a GUI window like so, and then I can give the project the name and I can select all the different dependencies that I require. So this is a very easy way of setting up a Spring Boot project, and then once I click finish, it will create the project. But in this case, we're not going to do that. I'm just giving you a quick demonstration so you get an idea how everything came together. Now what we are going to do is I'm going to take you through the very basics of Umicom framework, just to give you an idea exactly how it's put together and how it works. Now the first thing that we must be made aware of, that the entire journey starts here in the boot. So it's like you're booting up your computer, so it starts here at this point, and it's called application. Now we can find this out as well in the POM file. I've also added it here. You can see that it says here start class, and the start class is Umicom framework boot application, which tells it that it's here, Umicom framework boot application. So you know exactly where it is. So now you click, we're going to click on it and I'll show you what it looks like inside. There's the package name. This just gives it a name. You might be familiar with namespaces. In Java we call it packages, if you're not aware of this. Okay, now what I've got here is a number of annotations. I can replace all these annotations. There's a simpler one called Spring Boot application, which includes all these three, so you don't need to write all them together. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying component scan, and then I'm saying specifically, I'm saying, look, go to this package called Umicom Framework Controller. And this is where I've got the master controller located. Okay, and then there's a number of other things. I could have separated this, and maybe in the future I will separate this and have different configuration files to make it a lot simpler. But for now, in this version, what I've got is I've got everything together in one file, just for the moment. Okay, now what I have here is I've got an add resource handler. Now what that does, I can set any basically any location. I can just say, right, okay, this is the keyword. Whenever you find anywhere in a web page this /CSS, that, then you look for it inside this location here called Umicom Framework Resources CSS. Now if we look here, we see resources. If I open that up, I find the CSS in there. So what I'm trying to say is that when I include this anywhere in the application, always look in this location. If you type JS in anywhere inside, includes, or you're adding some sort of JavaScript, and you just add this as the location, the URL, it will always look into this location down here, which is Umicom framework resources JS. Now this cannot be accessed from outside to the public, so the only way to get to it is through basically by typing these locations, right? This, instead of writing absolute, you just type JS and it would always look in there in the relative path, okay, in the class path. Now the point that you need to be aware of exactly how it all works, that really loads everything together in the view. So the view itself, the URL is here, is the view resolver. This is the view section of the application. And remember, in the past I've always talked about model, view and controller. Now this is it. This is the view element, okay? So we're saying set the prefix, always look in this folder for the views, okay? So anything in this folder is going to be of JSP type. Just for you to be aware of, very simply, just to make it very, very, very basic, the view resolver is the place where I'm giving it the prefix, which is the location, okay, and the suffix, which is the extension of the file, okay? So if you say it's index.jsp, so it's always, I don't have to specify anymore. I don't have to type index.jsp as the name of the file. I can just write index and it's always going to resolve to .jsp, okay, because that's the type it is. I could have changed that and I could have made that HTML. So it's always going to be looking for, if I type any word, if I type home, it will always look for a file called home.html. If that's very, very, very simple, okay. In this case is always going to be .jsp, and this is the main class. This is where the application runs. So all it's saying here is load up this application, make it run, okay, just start it up. When it starts up, like I said before, it wants to go to the controller. So let's have a look at the controller. It's called Umicom framework.controller. So there's Umicom framework here and there's controller here. So if we double click on that or open it up, we get something called a master controller. And if we open that up, it's got Umicom framework.controller, which is basically the package name. So I gave this a name, all right, called Umicom framework.controller. As you can see, Umicom framework.controller is here, okay. Right, so once it gets to here, this is where the magic starts. This is how the master controller figures out exactly where to route to which slave controller or which module to route the call to or the request. So when the user comes into the site and types in home and he wants to go to the home page, it will go to the home folder. So there's a home folder here, and if I open this up, you've got its own controller called the slave controller, and it's got its view, and I've got a number of files here which I'll explain a little later what all these files are all about, okay. My intention is actually to make it one file, but for the moment I've got a number of files, okay, so we just leave it at that. But the point to take from this, what happens, it reads the URL, okay, it requests the URI here, and it loads it up and it checks the length. If the length is not specified, if there isn't an exact URL path, what it does is it always routes to home. So it makes it home, basically. It sets that as a default value. Okay, now once that happens, it basically would return to this. It would always go to the view index, okay. And the real magic that really happens is something called reflections. What I'm saying here, request mapping, anything that after that or forward slash, you know, it always results to uses something called reflection. Now what reflection does, it self-discovers itself. So the application discovers itself at runtime. So as the application is running, I can include another folder. As long as I build it and it's compiled, it becomes available. Where anything that routes to it, it always goes and looks for that folder. If that folder exists, if that package name exists, it starts running straight away, okay. Now what happens, so this is the magic part, okay. This is how it all works together. Here is just a little demonstration of a JSON test that I'm doing, and then you can see that this is another endpoint type, okay. So this is instead of it giving out a HTML kind of output, or it gives me a different kind of output. This is what JSON is all about. It gives me a JSON output. So this is called a RESTful architecture. All it is, it's basically giving me JSON output instead of HTML output. So this one would give me HTML output, this one would give me JSON output. This one I called it JSON test, and the way it works is very easily with Spring, and that's it. This is all it is, okay? And it converts this information into JSON output, which we'll see in a moment exactly what it looks like. Okay, so this is the easy part. Now if we go into the home, for example, and we've clicked on slave controller, let's see what that looks like. It's very simple. I didn't do anything complicated. It's very simple, and all it's doing is just returning the request. All I'm saying is, like, whatever, when it comes to this, just return the request to the URL, and that's it. So it's just, that's all it's doing, and it's basically going into the view here, and then it's loading up the index.jsp, which is here. Okay, that's all that's happening here. Okay, it's nothing special. It's just loading these files, and that's it. Okay, it's very easy. So I just basically right click on the mouse, click run, and then run as Spring Boot. If I want to run on the server, I would need to install Tomcat server. I need to have it running in the background or start it up. In this case, I haven't got Tomcat installed, but what I do have is an embedded Tomcat. Now what that means, I'll quickly explain that to you before I start running the application. What that basically means is, I've got here, if you look at the resources, in fact a better way to show it to you is I'll show it to you this way. Actually, this is much easier for you to see. If I go click on dependencies, and if I scroll down here, you can see here it says Tomcat embedded Jasper. Okay, now Tomcat is already built into the application. I don't need to have it running in the background. I don't need to install Tomcat on Windows. I don't need to do anything at all. It's a lightweight version of Tomcat server, and it loads up part of starting the application. So if I just basically now start running the application, let's have a look at this, right? So this is the file for home. Look how small it is, okay? And you can see it's doing something in the background here. It's starting up Tomcat server, as you can see here. On port 80, it should start on port 80. There you go, port 80. If I wanted to change that for any reason, if I want to run it on a different port, I can go to resources, I can go application.properties, click on that, and if you can see it just up there, I'll just move this down a little bit, and you can see here it says server.port 80. I can say port 8080, and then it will be port 8080, but for now just keep it at port 80. Nothing there. And now what we're going to do is going to go to Firefox as my favorite browser, and I'm just going to basically, all I'm going to do is going to go localhost. Let's have localhost, see what happens when I type localhost. Right, so there's the application. It ran, and this is the site that I'm building. Okay, it's called Umicom Commodity Marketplace or Commodity Exchange. Okay, this is my ambitious project, and basically hasn't been completed, but the gist of it, you can open up the application, look up here in the URL, you see it wouldn't change. If I click here, and it loads up a registration form. Now that needs a bit of formatting, so it looks much neater, but that's the idea, that it will basically do everything without me going anywhere else away from the website. Okay, now and here you can search for commodities, and you can get prices, blah 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 blah, and so on. Okay, but this is the magic is here. Okay, now what I could do is I could type a different URL. Let's say a URL, and let's call it Hayat, for example. Okay, if I type that, it says to me, look, there's nothing. This is an error. This is an error page. I need to create a different page, but this is a generic sort of error page, and it tells me here unexpected error. It can't find it really, and it says here, look, application.hayat.controller.slavecontroller. This is what it's looking for, but obviously that doesn't exist, therefore it's throwing this error message. But let's type something that does, so let's type something that does exist. I say Sammy, for example, and if I type that, it just says hello, because there is a folder. If we have a look here, and we see there's a folder called Sammy here, and then it's got controller, it's got view, and it's got a model. And if I just open the view, click on that, and you can see here, this is the page, but obviously something is going wrong. Let's have a look here. Where does it say hello? It says hello just there. Okay, part of the page. If we look at the page, all it says is these words here, and the rest is ignoring. Okay, so that's an issue. So let's see what else we have here. We've got something called old. Let's try that. Okay, let's have a quick look at that. Say old. This is probably the old design of my Umicom framework, and it's not actually working for some reason because the colors are incorrect. But this is the old site. Obviously the links are not working. The login registration it goes to a different location here, register, and then you can see here, this is body in register, main home page will be here. You know, I just got some random stuff. Okay, if I type Martin, for example, it's similar to the other page. All right, login. See what login does. It just takes us to a different page. Okay, but what it's actually doing, it's actually generating these pages at runtime. That login page, that login section might have not existed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly demonstrate something to you. This is running now, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to select, let's say for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the home. I'm going to copy it, show you how easy it is. Now the application is running in the background, just to make you aware, and I'm going to paste another copy of home, right? And it says copy of home, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it Hayat. Okay, that's all I need to do, right? And now I've got here, and you can see that it's got a red symbol. That means there's an error. Sometimes Eclipse is a bit funny and it just puts red, although there isn't any errors, but I know there is a problem here. So it's basically because it's going to home controller, I need to give it a unique name because there's already a thing, and it gives me a hint. It says to me change package declaration to application hayat.controller, and if I do that and now I save it, okay, so this is all done now. Okay, now there's a folder called Hayat, as you can see, and I've got the application running here. Now all I have to do is type the word Hayat, and should it work or not? What do you think? Have a guess. And check this out, Hayat is there. Wow, that's impressive. Even I'm impressed, and I created it. Okay, so it's so easy to create another section of the site without actually stopping the application. It's just amazing. It's just really amazing. And this is really, in a nutshell, what Umicom framework is all about. It's just a way to add new components into the project without having to restart the application, without having to do anything like that. There could be multiple developers working on the project at the same time, and they can all be adding different components, you know, new sections to the site without having to stop and recompile the application. It's just a one-off thing. You set it up once and that's it. In fact, what you could do, you could start a new project, copy this folder across, create this structure, whatever you want to have on the site, and that's it. You've got yourself, you know, a Umicom framework application. You don't have to do anything else.